I'm Council Member Robin Wansley, and I have the distinct honor of representing Ward 2. We are here today because the Minnesota Uber and Lyft Driver Association have asked the City Council to work with them to ensure that corporations like Uber and Lyft, in the current exploitative system that fuels unfair wages and unsafe working conditions for all resident workers or rideshare workers. These drivers behind me and thousands of others have been demanding that these rideshare companies engage with them fairly, but that has resulted in very limited outcomes. And in recent months, they have asked the city of Minneapolis to support them by passing worker protections. I am thrilled to be joined with my colleagues who I'll be introducing relatively shortly, Councilmember Jamal Osman and Councilmember Jason Chavez. We all have joined together to answer that call by taking the first step this morning to introduce the ordinance process by noticing our intention to bring forward a worker-centered policy in the upcoming months. All workers in Minneapolis deserve a living wage, and it's the responsibility of government and of our elected officials to ensure that we take the corrective actions that are necessary through our legislative authority so that drivers are guaranteed a minimum wage, increased safety protocols, and other critical worker rights, because they have become such a critical piece of our workforce and of our local economy. So the next several months, it's going to be a long collaborative legislative process between council and these drivers here to ensure that we are putting forward the strongest ordinance possible that expands their rights and their wages. Multi-billion-dollar corporations will always see workers as expendable, especially, expendable tools to line their own pockets unless governments fight back. And today is an opportunity in a moment where this local government, Minneapolis council members, are fighting back on behalf of our workers. Minneapolis drivers cannot wait for legislative actions at the federal level, and though I'm excited to hear there's massive support amongst our Minneapolis delegation to advance rights at the Capitol this legislative session, I have to state that we must move with urgency at the local level. So I am so excited to pass the mic over to our phenomenal list of speakers, the first being the president of the Uber and Lyft Association, Eid Ali. I ask you to come up.
Thank you, City Council Member Robinson, and thank you, City Council Member Osman, and thank you, Jason Chavez. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful event, and we are very excited. I am very overwhelmed with the news that we are getting today, and it came through the efforts that MULDA, Minnesota Uber and Lyft Drivers Association, made. We are not, as the organization of Minnesota Uber and Lyft Drivers Association, asking too much. We are asking what we deserve to get. We are asking a fair shake. It has been really tough time for the last few years, for the last, I would say, 7-8 years that I have been part of the Uber platform. It hasn't been a wonderful experience. And for that reason, I have met so many drivers. I have met so many drivers who were having and going through the same difficulty that I was going through. And finally, we realized that individual was not the right way to just approach and address those issues, and we started to organize and bring drivers together and gather their issues and problems. And thank God, when we did all of that, we just came to the next level, which was to just get some recognition for our organization. And we have had so many rallies, meetings with all kind of city elected officials and also state elected officials. And finally, we get the attention that we were looking for, and everybody was sympathetic to the cause that we were campaigning for, which is to just get some sort of protection for all of those drivers who were not doing less than to earn something for their own families. So I believe today is it's the most beautiful day that I would hand over this first victory to my fellow drivers who have been struggling and thank you so much for showing up, because of if we don't organize and don't put our efforts together, there is no way that we could have achieved the victory that we have today. So I'm going to thank everybody who is here. I'm also going to thank the elected officials who have just shown us a tremendous sympathy and give us a wonderful opportunity to listen about our cause. And now I will just leave the rest for my attorney, Mr. Stephen Cooper.
I think a lot of people, my name's Steve Cooper, and I think a lot of people don't understand the depth of the problem. What's happened in business is everything's been turned upside down here. In almost any business you work for, whether it's Target or 3M, the company has for your job. Here, the drivers have to buy the cars. The drivers have to repair the cars. The drivers have to provide the maintenance for the cars. That's backwards to any job most of you have, but it's the start of a wedge into changing our economy. Some people call it a gig economy. To put the burden of the capital onto the workers. We stopped that 100 years ago in the United States. We passed state laws, city ordinances, and federal laws to prevent that and to give certain rights. Here we have a driver. That blood on him is what happened when he was beat up in his own cab. But you know what the reality is right now? Because Uber and Lyft call their employees independent contractors, no workers' compensation, no benefits whatsoever for what happened to him and other drivers. You read about it in the newspaper every day. Somebody's killed when they're driving Uber or Lyft. No benefits. Tough. If you're not killed and you're seriously injured, no benefits for the rest of your life. No unemployment compensation. No other things that almost every employee expects to have. And as I already said, you have to finance the business. Uber and Lyft only come on board with what? They only come on board with the software. They provide the software, the same software throughout the country. They do not have to pay the cost of running that business. Now that's the start. When Uber and Lyft first came in here, and don't forget something that's very important, cabs have been regulated. When I was in college, I was a cab driver. Cabs have been regulated everywhere in the country forever. Uber and Lyft don't want to be regulated. They want to be able to do whatever they want to do. That's never been the way things are done. That's why I say everything's been turned on its head. Everything's been done backwards. The opposite of what we normally expect. And as I pointed out before, this is a spearhead. And when I say it's a spearhead, what I mean by that is more and more businesses are adopting this model. It saves them a lot of taxes. They don't have to pay taxes to the government for their employees. They don't have to pay unemployment compensation taxes. They don't have to pay workers' compensation taxes. They don't have to pay any of that. So the rest of us who are taxpayers, we do. Let's go to the specifics here. When Uber and Lyft first came into town, there were lots of thriving cab companies. How many are there now? A large part of that is because they've been able to create a monopoly. Other cab companies have to buy their own cabs. They have to provide benefits to their employees. Uber and Lyft don't. That creates a situation where we have a monopoly here in town. When they first came to town, they paid the employees a reasonable wage. But they control that, and so they keep dropping it and dropping it, dropping it. Even on your taxes, you get 60 cents a mile for driving your own car back and forth for your business. Here, Uber and Lyft do not even take that into consideration. So you have people come in as drivers and they think they're making X number of dollars, and they forget, wait a minute, I have to pay my monthly car payment, I have to pay for all the gas. How much does it cost to fill up gas? As gas prices have skyrocketed, the amount the drivers get has gone down. So you have Uber and Lyft drivers paying for the maintenance and the gas. You have Uber paying none of that and reducing what they pay them. So that's where we get to the ordinance. What we have here is a request for reasonable protections so that we have a situation where, one, the wages are reasonably associated with the profits being made. Uber and Lyft take most of the money when a driver drives his own car, uses his own gas, carries the risk, and as we talked about the risk, you can just imagine it. Having been a cab driver, I can't think of how many times I had to deal with somebody who was drunk, somebody who was angry, somebody who got physical. That's not what most of us has to deal with in our jobs. Most of our jobs don't have that added danger, but these folks do. The men and women who drive the cabs or drive Uber and Lyft deserve the kinds of protections that every other worker, and one of the excuses they use is say, well, many of them are part-time. Many of them aren't part-time. But if you are part-time working at Target or some other company, you still get all the benefits that the average person gets for the protections that we've created. And don't forget, these protections were created in over 100 years of thinking, solving problems, and making all of our jobs better. And then this clever scheme came up. And this clever scheme is based on a fallacy. The clever scheme is saying you're an independent contractor. You know what an independent contractor is. An independent contractor is somebody you call up once to come paint your house. And then they go to all kinds of other people to do things. And that is exactly not what Uber drivers are. So what we're asking for and are excited, as was said before, that we're getting the kind of response that is appropriate. It doesn't just protect Uber and Lyft drivers, it protects us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen and Eve, for again, we would not be in this moment without the resilient and dedicated organizing that all of you have led over years to get us to this point where elected leaders, and not only at the city level, but at the state level, federal level, like we are here working in solidarity with you to guarantee you those worker protections that you all have been organizing for. And speaking of elected officials, I just want to take the opportunity to introduce a number of my colleagues who's going to be working side by side with me and with the rest of our council members to make sure that we're passing the strongest ordinance possible for these workers and all rideshare workers. First, I want to introduce Council Member Jason Chavez, who represents Ward 9, to share a couple words.
Thank you, Council Member. Is it working? Hi, my name is Jason Chavez, Council Member of the 9th Ward. I proudly represent the largest Latino community in the entire state of Minnesota, a growing East African community, and the most racially diverse ward in the entire city of Minneapolis. And I'm just here to say that I stand with my constituents that are right behind me right now to pass a strong policy that's going to give us workers' protections for gig workers, for Uber and Lyft drivers, and making sure that their public safety, that their workers' protections and wages are being protected and expanded here in the city of Minneapolis. So just standing here in solidarity and making sure that we pass a strong policy. At the beginning of the fall, just this year, I took a Lyft to my city council meeting, a full council meeting, where I was about to be late, and the Lyft driver told me, what is the city of Minneapolis doing to protect the workers, Uber and Lyft drivers, and gig workers overall? And to that person, I tell you right now, this is the first step to make sure that your rights are being protected. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. Next, I'm going to pass it up to Councilmember Jamal Osman, who represents Ward 6.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Jamal Osman, Minneapolis City Council member in Ward 6. I want to thank my friends, my family, my residents, my community for showing up today. I also want to thank my colleagues for their support for the Somali community, for the minority community in the city of Minneapolis. I have been working on and tracking this issue for the last several months. Everything has to be an option, and rideshare companies need to know that things must change in Twin Cities. The conditions drivers are working under are unacceptable. Exploiting drivers to pay your fortune capital isn't going to work in the city of Minneapolis. I know drivers are working. I know they are working directly with the companies and negotiating. But the city of Minneapolis can play a role as well. We are exploring everything we can, and I want companies to know that includes creating alternative to Uber and Lyft. There were a group of contract workers protection introduced by former council member Fletcher, and I want to go and look into that again. I also want to add, this is not a gig job, as you call it. This is their full-time job. This is how they pay their families. This is how they pay their rent. It's what all of them wake up 5 in the morning to go to work and maybe come back late at night when it's dark. The safety concern, as you can see, this gentleman's shirt, as I know their stories because they are a member of my community, a member of my family. Uber and Lyft had their time in the city of Minneapolis. It's the companies that are not regulated. Every other company that works in the city of Minneapolis have some kind of protection for workers. We're not going to let these greedy companies continue violating their rights, and we will stand by that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Osmond. Next, we will have Councilmember Aisha Chugtai from Ward 10.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aisha Chugtai. I am a renter in the Whittier neighborhood. I'm a former labor organizer. I've worked shoulder to shoulder with working class people at SEIU on securing our rights. I am a firstborn daughter to a Muslim immigrant family, and I have the honor of representing the 10th Ward on the Minneapolis City Council. I'm here today to stand alongside our Uber and Lyft workers, our gig economy workers, in having protections from exploitation, from mistreatment in the workplace. All workers deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and this is one of many times that this group of workers has come to City Hall and demanded that we do something to intervene and to hold these corporations accountable for how they're treating their workers. I'm really proud to stand with you. Our communities, our workers, you deserve dignity and respect. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Chugtai. As I noted, we're going to conclude and go to Q&A, but I am so proud that, I have the backing of a number of my colleagues and these drivers as we start this process. Of course, the end goal is to pass the strongest policy possible to ensure that all rideshare workers, our Uber and Lyft drivers, in the emphasis of this, get the worker protections that every worker deserves. I think as, the attorney Stephen Cooper noted, I don't care if you're a part-time worker, I don't care if you work 2 hours, you are a worker and you deserve to know that you live in a city that cares about your protections and your safety on the job. So this is the first step of many today, and again, thank you to the drivers for getting us here. Yeah. So with that, I will end stand for questions.